Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottinen from the Flourish Academy. This is episode 548, and make sure you are following the Flourish Academy both on YouTube, that you subscribe, and you also subscribe to the podcast. We have 2 episodes that come out every week, and maybe this topic, the title of this video, seems a little bit morbid to you, but as a wedding photographer, this is something that was always on my mind. So, you know, the thing about being a wedding photographer, well, there are a lot of things, but you can't get sick, you can't have a bad day, you can't miss a wedding. So I always worked with other wedding photographers to back up each other's schedules. So what I mean by that, for instance, is especially the year when I had my son. I was pregnant that year, I shot 30 weddings. I had other wedding photographers that I networked with that I would check in and say, hey, what dates do you have? What dates do I have? When are we available? When could we help one another out if something happened and we needed to fill in for each other? Now, contractually, it says in my contract something along the lines of, if for some reason I am unable to attend your wedding, I will either send suitable backup. Well, I gotta think about this. Because now that I'm saying it, I see a problem. I will either send suitable backup, or the amount that I would pay back is equal to the amount paid. I don't know. There's some like legalese in there about what I would pay back to the client if I was unable to photograph the wedding. But the thing is, you know, it depends on what we're talking about. Is there something that was very last minute? And if that's the case, I think you as a professional have to find a way to get that wedding covered. And if it's something that's not last minute, like you know that something's coming, again, I think you have the responsibility to find a photographer or help them find someone. But in the case that you couldn't, then the refund would be only up to a certain amount. I can't remember. It says something like that in my contract. But I've just often thought of that because you can't miss a wedding. So if you are a wedding photographer, I would consider networking with other wedding photographers just in case something comes up, especially now. So I had a friend a couple of weeks ago that had a wedding scheduled. She was all set, and on Friday before the Saturday wedding, she found out that her husband had COVID and she was obviously exposed to it. So she couldn't photograph the wedding and she had to find somebody really quickly to fill in for her. I mean, things like that are going to happen whether there's a pandemic or not. I think you should just always be networking with other photographers that you trust to cover one of your weddings, and not just one other photographer, because they may or may not be available, but probably a group of photographers. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is, I always had a plan for if something happened to me, someone would be able to go through my files, take care of my clients, and dismantle my business. So what I'm suggesting here is, if I were to die, something really tragic happened, that there's someone in place that would know what to do with my business. And I just wonder if you've thought of that, or you have anyone in place for your business. I believe that this is especially important for wedding photographers, but applies to everyone without question. So when I was photographing up to 30 weddings a year, I had my friend Leanne Marie as my designated go-to person if something happened to me. So my husband had a set of instructions and information that if I were to die, he was to turn all this over to Leanne, and she would dismantle my business and make sure that my clients were taken care of, notified, etc. Okay, but since I don't photograph as many weddings as I used to, and my business model has changed a little bit, I now work with my good friend Nicole Begley from Hair of the Dog. So Hair of the Dog and the Flourish Academy are formatted in a very similar fashion. She just deals with pet photographers and I deal with people photographers. But I have put together a spreadsheet of information with all of the accounts that I have. I mean, think about all of the auto payments that you have hitting your checking account or your credit card. Oh, hi, Christina. Happy Monday. All these auto payments that you have hitting your bank account or your credit card, like you would have to get those stopped pretty quickly, or they would just continue to rack up charges. So I have created this document, and has all of the information that Nicole would need should something happen to me and she would need to sell my business, maybe, I don't know, dismantle the business. She would be able to close the accounts and do everything. My husband has this information, so I would get the information to him so he could get it to her. Also, I gave my mom this information because if Craig and I were to die in a plane crash, then my mom would need it to, well, Nicole would know to seek it out. She would know to contact my mom and say, hey, Heather has this document for me so that I can dismantle her business. I know this seems a little bit morbid, but I just think it's good business practice to plan for anything and everything that might happen. Again, especially if you're a wedding photographer, you have to network with other photographers in case you get sick or something happens, but you also need to have something in place in case you die so that your clients are, I often thought if I had 30 weddings scheduled for an upcoming year and I died, 30 brides would need to be notified or taken care of. Like, that's a lot to manage, and there's money involved, and I wouldn't want to leave them hanging. I mean, it would just be terrible. So I put somebody in charge of taking care of that if something happens to me. I don't know if you find this useful or ridiculous, but whatever type of photographer you are, I think it's a good idea to have something in place so that somebody could take care. Listen, if you die tragically, it is obviously going to be very difficult for your family. Do you want to make that harder by having a business that they have no idea what you use or what you have or what's set up, or your bank accounts or your credit cards or your auto payments, your expenses? Like, why not make it as easy as possible? I actually read a book on this years ago from Dave Ramsey called The Legacy Journey. And it was about planning for the legacy, you know, for your children and your future generations. And he talks about something he calls a legacy box, where you would have information like all of your bills, all of your accounts, all of your insurance information in one place. So essentially I adapted that for business, and I think it's just a good idea to do that. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you in the next video.